Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about Golden Shield Resources. We're a gold exploration company in Guyana and part of the Inventor Capital Group. I'm going to make some forward-looking statements. We listed the company in February this year. We have an experienced team in Guyana, as I'll go on to explain. We like Guyana. It's a very favorable mining jurisdiction. And we have 3 projects. We currently have 28 million shares outstanding, and with warrants and options, we have about 34 million shares fully diluted. So in terms of the team, Hilbert Shields, the CEO and president, is the most important person in the team. Hilbert was VP Exploration for Golden Star through its ascendancy in the 90s. In Guyana, he's Guyanese and Canadian. Knows Guyana like the back of his hand and is an expert on the geology of the Guyana Shield. So he's been instrumental in putting the property portfolio together and managing operations in Guyana. Colin Porter is a PhD with structural geologist with 25 years experience in West Africa, which are the same rocks essentially as we find in Guyana. And the other person worth mentioning on the board is Alison Redford, who is the former Premier of Alberta, who is helping the Guyanese government with their transition to becoming an oil-focused economy with the large discovery they've had offshore recently. So as I mentioned, Guyana is the same rocks as West Africa. They separated with the opening of the Atlantic Ocean. But there's been a lot less gold found on the Guyana side, despite the aerial extent of the shield being larger. And I think the main reasons for that are lack of exploration spending, lack of infrastructure, and the development of more saprolites on the Guyanese side of the Atlantic, which inhibits exploration a little bit. So why Guyana now? As I mentioned, Guyana is a country of 800,000 people. They have a large oil discovery offshore. They have more oil reserves than Bahrain at the moment. And so with such a small population, the GDP is really increasing almost exponentially. And they're putting a lot of that money into infrastructure, which helps ameliorate the infrastructure challenge that I alluded to earlier. It's also an English-speaking jurisdiction with a very stable mining law. It has a long history of bauxite and diamond and gold mining. So there's been a steady increase in exploration activity in the last few years. You're probably familiar with Reunion Gold that did a JV with Barrick in 2019. In 2020, we saw Zijin acquire Guyana Goldfields, Gran Colombia acquired Goldex, and most recently last year, Barrick opened an office in Guyana, which was the first major company to do so in this cycle. Golden Shield has 3 projects in its portfolio. The flagship property is Marudi Mountain, about 55 square kilometers, claim with about 350,000 ounces in a historic resource at a grade of about 1.8. ARAKAKA is a very large property, about 177 square kilometers, with a lot of data from previous operators who spent about $25 million on the property. And Fish Creek at about 60 square kilometers is a property with a very large historic gold production from small surface mines, which has a number of drill-ready targets on it, as I'll go on to explain. So Marudi, the flagship, has seen drilling in the past focused on Mazoa Hill, which is a black dot in the middle of that image, and Marudi North. What we're looking at here is the Helimag, which was done late in the project's history, which really reveals the underlying geology, and Colin Porter has done a very good job of interpreting this and developing more targets for us. We've been focusing our drilling mainly on Mazoa Hill, the historic resource I mentioned. And we've been stepping out to depth on that with very encouraging results, 50 meters at 9.1 grams, 9.7 meters at 11.9 grams for our phase 1 drilling. And then we went back to step out further on that and receive results such as 33 meters at 3.45 grams and 31 meters at 7.58. So we're stepping out on that high-grade resource. And we're also trying to develop other prospects on the property which are indicated on the map. Those are all projects with high-grade gold, or prospects with high-grade gold at surface that have the characteristic host rock that we see at Mazoa Hill that hosts those high-grade intercepts. So at Mazoa Hill, mineralization is essentially hosted in a 30 or 40 meter thick slab that dips steeply to the west. So we set up our phase 1 drill program to drill at 90 degrees to that to try and get true thicknesses. With these results, and then as we expanded, as we stepped out to depth, we found that the westerly dipping slab actually folds around and dips to the east, which hadn't been drilled by previous drilling, and that's really what leads the deposit to be open to depth. That new interpretation that wasn't previously seen. So to drill the easterly dipping lower limb of the mineralization, we went to the second phase of drilling and drilled back from the east westwards to try and get true thicknesses on that lower limb. So this is what that looks like in section, what I was just trying to describe, where previous operators saw this as a slab dipping steeply to the west that just terminated at depth. And what we found with our drilling is that as I said, it actually folds around to the west, which leads the mineralization to be open at depth, not tested by previous drilling. So you can see in the section on the right, our hole that came from the west to the east that essentially partially went down that lower limb, and that was really what put the light bulb on for us that this wasn't a steeply dipping slab dipping to the west. So then we came to the east and drilled hole 21 that was from the phase 2 drilling that stepped out on that high grade and extended it to depth. And these high-grade intercepts remain open to depth. So Marudi Mountain's a bit different from other deposits in the Guyana Shield. It's not a shear-hosted deposit, which is the type that most companies are exploring for. It's been called a banded ironstone formation in the past. It's essentially hosted in that bed, which gives it more thickness, and certainly at the angle it's dipping is favorable for mining. The best analog we've been able to find in the Guyana Shield is ROSEBEL in Suriname. Hilbert Shields actually worked there, so he's very familiar with it. And at ROSEBEL, you see a similar bed-hosted mineralization. So this slide is really just to illustrate that the relatively early stage that Marudi Mountain is in the same size claim block, which is the dashed boxes on the ROSEBEL slide. There's potential to find large deposits at Marudi as we move out from the cluster of prospects that we have to explore the rest of the claim block. This is just a schematic to show what we're doing at Marudi Mountain, whereby as we explore the claim block, we will bring targets into the bottom of the triangle, do the surface work to develop them to drill stage, and then they'll move up the triangle, and as we drill test them, hopefully move on to additional resources. I should say we also drilled at Toucan Creek this year, where we had that similar unit in outcrop. We went in and drilled 6 holes. The best intercept was 6 meters at 4.84 grams, open to the west. So we will go back to Toucan Creek and also Toucan Ridge, which is directly to the north, and do some follow-up drilling there. The second property I mentioned is ARAKAKA, which, as I said, has had a huge amount of exploration done on it in the past. It's a very large land position. Previous drilling focused in two areas, Gomes and Xenops. This was explored by an Australian company in the past, and there was a 500,000 ounce resource at Gomes that worked under JORC but didn't work under 43101. But it does have this is high grade gold and shear zones. Gomes' best intercept was 3.4 grams over 19 meters. That's open. The other area of drilling was Xenops, and that has a drill intercept of 16.4 grams over 3 meters that's open to depth. So we're currently going back and looking at these and developing exploration programs to expand those zones, and also looking at a couple of targets that weren't drilled in the past that you can see in the heat map, which is gold in soils on the right-hand side. McCaw and Avio, both of which were undrilled and had trenches of, in the case of McCaw, 20 meters at nearly 3 grams, and in the case of Avio, 22 meters at 2.15 grams that weren't followed up on and weren't drilled. So we have a lot to do at ARAKAKA, and as I said, we're just developing work programs and budgets to drill test that before the end of the year. The third property is Fish Creek, which is an earlier stage of exploration. The yellow line on that map outlines the artisanal pits that occur on the property from which a lot of gold production came. It's seen very limited drilling. The best drill intercepts that came out of it, 11.4 grams over 7 meters, 2.8 grams over 3.1 meters. But it really hasn't seen any modern day exploration. So we're going to go and do some geophysics, do some additional surface work, and aim to develop drill targets there and test them before year end as well. So how we see Golden Shield growing is really on three fronts: expanding Mazoa Hill, which we're stepping out onto depth, exploring and drill testing and finding more of the prospects on the Marudi claim, developing drill targets and testing them at ARAKAKA, and also Fish Creek, and also leveraging our strong in-country knowledge and connections to evaluate additional opportunities within the country in which we would add to the portfolio if they made sense on a value basis. So Golden Shield as a newcomer is not as well known as the other explorers in Guyana, and I think that's been reflected in the market capitalization, currently 14 or 15 million. So I think to move with greater recognition, to move Golden Shield up that value curve we see in Guyana, won't be too difficult. And we announced last week we're currently doing $6 million brokered financing through Canaccord, and we'll use those funds to do the exploration work I just described. Thank you.